It's definitely sad that we can't put on the play at school, and it was gonna be like my first musical at the school.
Being away from my drama friends, I keep things to myself more, and I can't really connect to anyone.
My expectation was that I was gonna be on the stage with a bunch of friends, and I'm really sad that I couldn't do that.
They're theater kids, so they perform, and they want to put that strong face forward, and it makes me very proud as their teacher, but I know that they are missing out on those opportunities.
I've never done anything like this, so hopefully you guys think this is as cool as I do. I think this is really different and weird and awesome. Hands up if you're ready to start. Top of the page, we'll start again. The director approaches a sheepish mouse.
I'm not going out there. There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Yeah, I think that works great. Fairy godmother swings by.
Logan, if you drop me, I am so breaking up with you!
Something that was really clear in talking to all the kids at Thurman White Middle School was that their friendships, their social existence is entirely born out of being creative with other people. And there you are.
That's cool. I love that. That's me. I'm cute. I'm a cartoon now.
When you're not looking at it, there's nothing. But when I look, the little face appears. Hi, how are you?
Not helping! Not helping!
He still hasn't figured out how to get me in the play. Like that?
That's great.
Don't worry, Gracie. The curtain only goes up when we all have a part to play.
I believe in you, Terrence.
The cartoon was just, it was just so cool.
There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Pretend everyone in the audience is in their underwear, and you'll be fine.
My parents are in the audience.
A play without Gracie is like a unicorn without a horn.
A fairy godmother without a wand.
A dragon without fire.
Toadstools without toes. Or stools.
Helping! This makes me feel like I'm a part of something bigger.
I think that the most fun part of it was that it was like a community, so everyone got to experience these things together, and we can all look back and say, like, this was what we did together.
It seems almost impossible to have that all converge together into one beautiful performance, but through the magic of these technologies and animation, we're actually able to make that happen, and it's super wonderful to see come together.
2 minutes till showtime.
Life happens all around you. A collection of moments, experiences, emotions. It comes at you fast, moving at an ever-accelerating pace. CNF believes your focus should be on life, on those things that are important to you, in whatever moment they happen. You're committed to your passions, your goals, your future. We're committed to being there with you, to giving your needs our undivided attention, earning your trust by understanding what's important to you, a trust reinforced by nearly 100 years of service to our communities, bolstered by diversified experience, fortified by the might of not just one company, but 4. Each one dedicated to providing the foresight needed to help you reach your goals, support your dreams, and the horsepower you need to make today your focus. CNF isn't ours. It's yours. We're here to help you face whatever life may throw your way. We're focused on you, so that as life happens, you'll be ready. You focus on life, we'll focus on you.
My mom, she was my inspiration for becoming a nurse. I miss my mom and the ability to show her physical love.
My family lives 6 hours north. I would go once or twice a month to go see them. But starting at the end of March, I stopped going up because it's very dangerous.
My parents, they wouldn't mind if I was there all the time, but I've pulled away. I miss the freedom of just going over there and hanging out and not having to worry.
My mom, she's always looking after you and making sure you're fed. So I miss that about her a lot.
My mom, she would make a Puerto Rican dish or an Italian dish, and those were always so delicious.
My mom, she loves to feed us. So she'd call me, hey, I made this or I made that, but I would make up excuses not to be around.
Hi.
Oh my God, I'm about to cry.
It's so good, thank you.
That is incredible.
I sent you some files and you've been working so hard.
Oh my God, you're so good.
Okay, how proud I am. And I miss you. Ha extrañado mucho la comida y de estar juntos.
You got everything in here that I wanted.
Gracias, Mom. Gracias, Dad, por la comida.
I love you.
I love you more. Thank you so much. This really made my day.
It's definitely sad that we can't put on the play at school, and it was gonna be like my first musical at the school.
Being away from my drama friends, I keep things to myself more, and I can't really connect to anyone.
My expectation was that I was gonna be on the stage with a bunch of friends, and I'm really sad that I couldn't do that.
They're theater kids, so they perform, and they want to put that strong face forward, and it makes me very proud as their teacher, but I know that they are missing out on those opportunities.
I've never done anything like this, so hopefully you guys think this is as cool as I do. I think this is really different and weird and awesome. Hands up if you're ready to start. Top of the page, we're starting again. The director approaches a sheepish mouse.
I'm not going out there. There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Yeah, I think that works great. Fairy godmother swings by.
Logan, if you drop me, I am so breaking up with you!
Something that was really clear in talking to all the kids at Thurman White Middle School was that their friendships, their social existence is entirely born out of being creative with other people. And there you are.
That's cool. I love that. That's me. I'm cute. I'm a cartoon now.
When you're not looking at it, there's nothing. But when I look, the little face appears. Hi, how are you?
Not helping! Not helping!
He still hasn't figured out how to get me in the play. Like that?
That's great.
Don't worry, Gracie. The curtain only goes up when we all have a part to play. I believe in you, Terrence.
The cartoon was just, it was just so cool.
There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Pretend everyone in the audience is in their underwear, and you'll be fine.
My parents are in the audience.
A play without Gracie is like a unicorn without a horn.
A fairy godmother without a wand.
A dragon without fire.
Toadstools without toes. Or stools.
Not helping!
This makes me feel like I'm a part of something bigger.
I think that the most fun part of it was that it was like a community, so everyone got to experience these things together, and we can all look back and say, like, this was what we did together.
It seems almost impossible to have that all converge together into one beautiful performance, but through the magic of these technologies and animation, we're actually able to make that happen, and it's super wonderful to see come together.
2 minutes till showtime.
Life happens all around you. A collection of moments, experiences, emotions. It comes at you fast, moving at an ever-accelerating pace. CNF believes your focus should be on life, on those things that are important to you, in whatever moment they happen. You're committed to your passions, your goals, your future. We're committed to being there with you, to giving your needs our undivided attention, earning your trust by understanding what's important to you, a trust reinforced by nearly 100 years of service to our communities, bolstered by diversified experience, fortified by the might of not just one company, but 4. Each one dedicated to providing the foresight needed to help you reach your goals, support your dreams, and the horsepower you need to make today your focus. CNF isn't ours, it's yours. We're here to help you face whatever life may throw your way. We're focused on you, so that as life happens, you'll be ready. You focus on life, we'll focus on you.
My mom, she was my inspiration for becoming a nurse. I missed my mom and the ability to show her physical love.
My family lives 6 hours north. I would go once or twice a month to go see them. But starting at the end of March, I stopped going up because it's very dangerous.
My parents, they wouldn't mind if I was there all the time, but I've pulled away. I miss the freedom of just going over there and hanging out and not having to worry.
My mom, she's always looking after you and making sure you're fed. So I miss that about her a lot.
My mom, she would make a Puerto Rican dish or an Italian dish, and those were always so delicious.
My mom, she loves to feed us. So she'd call me, hey, I made this or I made that, but I would make up excuses not to be around.
Oh my God, I'm about to cry. It's so good, thank you.
That is incredible.
I sent you some files and you've been working so hard.
Oh my God, they're so good.
Okay, how proud I am. And I miss you. Ha extrañado mucho la comida y de estar juntos.
You got everything in here that I wanted.
Gracias, Mom. Gracias, Dad, por la comida.
I love you.
I love you more. Thank you so much. This really made my day.
It's definitely sad that we can't put on the play at school, and it was gonna be like my first musical at the school.
Being away from my drama friends, I keep things to myself more, and I can't really connect to anyone.
My expectation was that I was going to be on the stage with a bunch of friends, and I'm really sad that I couldn't do that.
They're theater kids, so they perform, and they want to put that strong face forward, and it makes me very proud as their teacher, but I know that they are missing out on those opportunities.
I've never done anything like this, so hopefully you guys think this is as cool as I do. I think this is really different and weird and awesome. Hands up if you're ready to start. Top of the page, we're starting again. The director approaches a sheepish mouse.
I'm not going out there. There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Yeah, I think that works great. Fairy Godmother swings by.
Logan, if you drop me, I am so breaking up with you!
Something that was really clear in talking to all the kids at Thurman White Middle School was that their friendships, their social existence is entirely born out of being creative with other people. And there you are.
That's cool. I love that. That's me. I'm cute. I'm a cartoon now.
When you're not looking at it, there's nothing. But when I look, the little face appears. Hi, how are you?
Not helping! Not helping!
He still hasn't figured out how to get me in the play. Like that?
That's great.
Don't worry, Gracie. The curtain only goes up when we all have a part to play. I believe in you, Terrence.
The cartoon was just, it was just so cool.
There's like 1,000 people, maybe 1 billion.
Pretend everyone in the audience is in their underwear and you'll be fine.
My parents are in the audience.
A play without Gracie is like a unicorn without a horn.
A fairy godmother without a wand.
A dragon without fire.
Toadstools without toes. Or stools.
Not helping!
This makes me feel like I'm a part of something bigger.
I think that the most fun part of it was that it was like a community, so everyone got to experience these things together, and we can all look back and say, like, this was what we did together.
It seems almost impossible to have that all converge together into one beautiful performance, but through the magic of these technologies and animation, we're actually able to make that happen, and it's super wonderful to see come together.
2 minutes till showtime.
Life happens all around you. A collection of moments, experiences, emotions. It comes at you fast, moving at an ever-accelerating pace. CNF believes your focus should be on life, on those things that are important to you, in whatever moment they happen. You're committed to your passions, your goals, your future. We're committed to being there with you, to giving your needs our undivided attention, earning your trust by understanding what's important to you, a trust reinforced by nearly 100 years of service to our communities, bolstered by diversified experience, fortified by the might of not just one company, but 4. Each one dedicated to providing the foresight needed to help you reach your goals, support your dreams, and the horsepower you need to make today your focus. CNF isn't ours, it's yours. We're here to help you face whatever life may throw your way. We're focused on you, so that as life happens, you'll be ready. You focus on life, we'll focus on you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Virginia Peninsula Chamber's latest event in the 757 Vision Series. My name is Bob McKenna. I'm President and CEO of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome you to the latest event in the 757 Vision Eyes on the Future Series, Reviving Social Capital in the 757. We have all been through a challenging time for the last 14 months. The pandemic has impacted us all in ways that we never anticipated. 2 weeks to flatten the curve led to a very tumultuous year, both economically and socially. As our communities begin to open up again, we must focus our collective efforts on recovering and rebuilding resilience. After the last recession, it took our region over 8 years to recover economically. We will not allow that to happen again. Prior to the pandemic, the Hampton Roads region was beginning to see a resurgence in our regional collaborative efforts and good signs of economic growth. We had much to be proud of and still do. We now must work together as a region to reignite that energy, optimism, and sense of community and collaboration. The Peninsula Chamber has joined a coalition of business organizations to help do that through the 757 Business Recovery and Resiliency Framework that advances 5 strategic imperatives, including building regional unity, growing new jobs, attracting and retaining new talent, growing resiliency to future threats, and advancing regional infrastructure. For this plan to be successful, we must capitalize on our strengths, obviously, but also recognize our weaknesses and work hard to mitigate them and/or make them strengths. In keeping with the Chamber's mission to connect business with opportunity through facilitation, advocacy, communication, and education, we are hosting this monthly series of moderated panels called 757 Vision, Eyes on the Future, in which we will take a look at some of our strengths and weaknesses in an effort to inspire, inform, and drive action. A very important aspect of that is being a part of a strong, unified community, focused positively on our great assets. Social capital is a set of shared values that enable people to stand together in society and live harmoniously. Local social capital is a solid predictor of how well communities, neighborhoods, and cities perform as engines of upward mobility for all of their citizens. Social capital influences many aspects of our lives, including education, healthcare, and public safety. Today's very talented panel, and let me just tell you, this is a superstar panel. I think you're all going to enjoy this very much. Moderated by Alvin Lyons, we'll discuss in brainstorming fashion existing social capital in the 757. This is only the beginning of a conversation that hopefully will prove very fruitful and drive future action. Please listen and participate. This is a conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts as we move forward. And just a reminder, use the Q&A box for questions and comments, not the chat box. Before we get started, I would like to recognize some distinguished viewers in today's audience. From Senator Mark Warner's office, Drew Lumpkin. From the Newport News City Council, Dave Jenkins. And one of our panelists today, Newport News Commissioner of the Revenue, Tiffany Boyle. I would also like to thank today's presenting sponsor, also our series sponsor, Cox Virginia. Cox is a highly valued partner of the Chamber, and their sponsorship for these events makes it possible to offer them to you at no cost. Representing Cox today is Sarah Buck. Sarah is the Senior Manager of Public Affairs for Cox Virginia. Her focus is working towards building a better future through business development opportunities, digital equity programs, and corporate social responsibility. Sarah currently serves on the Virginia Peninsula Chamber's Board of Directors and the Hampton Roads Chamber's Communications Committee. Sarah has a bachelor's degree in communication studies, she's smiling, from Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. In 2016, Sarah was recognized as one of Hampton Roads' top 40 under 40 by Inside Business and is a Girl Scout Council of Colonial Coast Future Famous Former. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Buck.
Thank you, Bob. I think it's safe to say that 2020 taught us a lot about agility and resiliency, and the Chamber has done an outstanding job putting together intentional programming throughout the pandemic, and we're happy to be a part of it. I'm looking forward to today's discussion about how, by working together, the business community will bounce back from all the challenges COVID has presented. If it wasn't for agility, not only in 2020 and now into 2021, Cox wouldn't be as successful as it is today, delivering services that keep both residential and commercial customers connected to the things that matter most, as well as being a dedicated community partner and corporate citizen. For more than 123 years, Cox has evolved its business and services to meet the growing demand of its customers and of connectivity. And over the past 14 months, just about everyone else has had to do the same. So we're all in the same boat together: school systems, nonprofits, healthcare, public safety, the list goes on. Fortunately, we're in a position to be part of the solution for residents and businesses faced with adversity. From helping businesses who were faced with financial hardships stay online and connected so they could continue to serve their customers and bring in those dollars to keep them afloat, to connecting more than 5,000 households with children to our low-cost broadband internet so they could learn from home, to making significant contributions to organizations like local food banks that support our neighbors. We worked together to find solutions to keep businesses, organizations, families, to keep them all connected, because we've all got to be in this together to get through it. I appreciate being a part of this series, and I look forward to the collaboration today and beyond. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Alvin Lyons. Ms. Lyons is a nationally respected speaker, relationship expert, and leadership consultant. She is the host of the brand new radio show on WHOV and streaming podcast, The Lyons Den, and the co-host of NPR's relationship podcast, Love Life. She is the relationship expert on Virginia Public Radio's award-winning call-in show, Another View, and WHOV's The Pastor's Study. Ms. Lyons is a renowned leadership consultant for numerous Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. As CEO of AL Inc., she has spearheaded a radical shift in partnering in the public and private sector with multiple groundbreaking programs, including the EDGE program for the city of Hampton. Ms. Lyons also serves as member of the board of directors for the Virginia Unity Project, a nonprofit violence prevention organization. Before launching AL Inc., Ms. Lyons was a founding partner of Trace Success Consulting, LLC, where she functioned as CEO for over a decade. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Hampton University and a Master's of Education in Counseling from the College of William and Mary. Ms. Lyons has also conducted doctoral research in advanced studies in human behavior and counseling, education, and supervision. Ms. Lyons has published 2 audiobooks about improving relationships at work and at home, and recently finalized her first book on leadership. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Alvin Lyons.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I am so glad to be able to spend this afternoon with you all as we have this incredible discussion moving forward around, this word that Sarah was so kind to elevate in terms of together. I have the pleasure of being able to facilitate this conversation with 3 incredible panelists that I get to introduce and welcome into this conversation, that I will ask for them to just introduce themselves just slightly, just a little, tell a little bit about them as I bring each one individually into the conversation. So first, let me introduce Miss Tiffany Boyle. Tiffany, will you kind of let us see you at this point come into our conversation and just say hello to the audience and tell them just a quick bit about yourself. Tiffany. There we go.
Hello.
We can hear you now. Hi, Tiffany.
We got it. So thank you for having me on this panel. I look forward to talking about social capital. Today, I am the Commissioner of Revenue for the City of Newport News, and that's pretty much it.
As if that's not enough.
Right, that encompasses a lot.
Right. Indeed. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this conversation. We so look forward to your brilliance as we, have this discussion. Next, let me bring into our conversation Mr. Howard Hutch, who is part of our discussion today. Howard, will you please, introduce yourself to our audience today?
Yeah, thanks, Al. As she said, my name is Howard Hagee. I'm the president and CEO at the Mariners Museum and Park. Been in the community for about 5 years, absolutely fallen in love with the community, and I've had the honor to serve on a number of boards thinking about economic development, in particular on the board of the Economic Development Authority in Newport News, and on the Chamber board as well. And really looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Howard, for joining us. This will be really exciting. The final panelist that will be part of this conversation today will be Miss Sarah Jane Kirkland. Sarah, will you unmute and introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you so much, Al. It's good to see everybody. And yes, my name is Sarah Jane Kirkland. I am the president and CEO for Civic Leadership Institute. As you might tell, I'm originally from the United Kingdom. The Hampton Roads region is my home now, and I love it. I feel like we've got so many great assets right here. Like Howard, I'm heavily involved in the community, not just through my work, but also through different boards and commissions that I work on as well. So I'm thrilled to be here, and it's going to be a great conversation.
Well, I'm really excited about this conversation. We've all had the pleasure of being able to talk to each other before and really share some ideas, but we get a chance to have a more broad conversation today to include the community inside of that discussion. Now, we say, that we use this kind of nebulous word, social capital, or nebulous term, right? And in today's society, that could mean 1,000 things to 1,000 different people, which really commands us to sort of elevate into this discussion the meaning meaning of that. What does social capital really mean? How is it defined? And each of us may come at it from a slightly different angle based on our experiences with it, our research, our reading, and our own exposure. So to begin this conversation, I'd really like to ask you individually, sort of, what does that mean to you? And since it's 2021, I'm going to be a little outside of the norm, and I'm going to go to the man first in this conversation. It's also often ladies first, but this is a space of equality. So, Howard, let me ask you, when you use the term social capital, what does that really mean to you, both as a human, because there's a human factor inside of all of this, and then as a professional?
Yeah, so you're smart to go to me first, because Sarah Jane and I have worked enough together in the past. This gives her an opportunity to clean up what could be a train wreck coming out of my mouth right now. So thank you for the opportunity for folks to forget what I said once the other two have a chance to speak.
It's always about teamwork, Howard.
That's it. So I tend to think about social capital professionally in sort of an academic way, right? It is a really nebulous and amorphous and kind of soft term. Right. And so when I think about it academically, there's one study that I'm particularly drawn to that looked at communities in the Northeast that were recovering from Hurricane Sandy and trying to assess what made them resilient, what made them recover faster or slower. And of course, you know where I'm going. They ended up looking at social capital. And in that study, they said, look, there's 4 elements to social capital. The first is the degree to which everybody in the community identifies as a community. And the second element is the frequency and quality of social exchange, right? The way that we interact with one another. Mm-hmm. And the third element is the existence of informal problem-solving mechanisms in the community. So when we've got a problem, instead of looking upwards or outwards outside of us, we just fix it ourselves. And then the fourth element is general trust. And these studies say that the higher level of social capital in a community, the better I do in each of those elements, the more resilient that community is, and the greater potential for economic growth in the community. And then I would tell you personally, right? Sometimes I have been accused of maybe overthinking things a little bit. So, professionally, I go to the academic definition. But the truth is, it just boils down to relationships and trust to me. And I wore today, you're not going to be able to see it, but I've got on, the United Way ran a campaign, United Way of Virginia Peninsula ran a campaign a few years ago, just the Be Kind campaign.
Right.
And they just put that message out, be kind. And you know what? It's a pretty good start to building social capital.
I absolutely love that, Howard, because really at the end of the day, which is part of the reason why I said, the human factor in it all, right? It's very easy to get very cerebral and, we have discussions that are totally above our shoulders. But at the end of the day, a community is so based on the things that are below our shoulders, like how do we feel about the people who lead us, the people that we live next to, the people that we engage with, the businesses that we frequent. All of those things are often feeling. So there's really sort of that intersection between what we think and know about something and what we feel about something. And to leave either of those factors outside of a conversation is to miss 50% of what it means to be a human inside of this space, right? So Sarah, let me pop over to you. So when you think, Sarah Jane, about social capital and you have to clean up whatever it is that Howard didn't do perfectly, what exactly would you say about what is this nebulous concept to you, Sarah Jane?
Thank you. And Howard said it all. So it is a very hard topic because you're right. Through everybody's lens, this means something different. And I think depends on actually if you've come into a community from somewhere else as well. I think you see it through a different lens. I think as our region, actually, this should be just as important as economic resilience. I mean, it needs to be something that we really put into one of our key components of our community for growth. And so, we're dependent on social capital. And so, you know, for me, I think of it along the terms of there's lots of different components to me. So it's that sense of belonging. So when I first moved to the Hampton Roads region, I felt like I had a sense of belonging here. There was people that welcomed you, made you feel like you were part of something. And then, as Howard said, it's the shared values. I think Bob actually said it as well. It's those shared values as well, collectively. And then I think what we're really fortunate in this region is diversity too. And I think that's such an incredible asset that we have here. And I think that that's what makes our community strong, is the diversity that we have. And then for my work in particular, I, have this amazing network of alumni that work in the community, but networking is a key part of that. You and I just met just this past week. We're fast friends. But it's that networking and that constant, you know this person, I know this person, and bringing it all together that helps to make that social capital that much stronger. And then, all of these things, including citizen engagement as well. And I think the engagement portion of it is something that is often overlooked. If we don't start to engage as an entire community, the problems won't go away. They're just going to get larger. And so we have to work together and try to resolve whatever those challenges and opportunities are in our region to grow into a much stronger community as a whole. So I work with personally 3 C's. So it's collaboration, connectivity, and community. And those are 3 things that I feel like if a region has it, that we have that strength, at least that foundation that we can grow from. And then ultimately, the world's our oyster. It'd be really great if Hampton Roads could really put an awful lot of emphasis on social capital here, and other regions start looking to us to say, hey, how did you do that? Like, what is that special magic sauce that you've got? And more people will start to want to come here too. It'll become more of an attractive place to want to live. And so, I think Howard really knocked the, nail on the head though with the trust. And I think all of those things combined is the trust. And if you trust people, ultimately we can move forward as a region together. But trust is that key component, but you can't have trust till you've had all of those other things intertwined with each other.
So I love that, because that really speaks to, like when we talk about building something, right? We're really trying to build this social capital to kind of rejuvenate this thing that we know fundamentally exists inside of our community, but how do we really capitalize on that? So what exists perhaps at a smaller level could be a larger thing at some point, and ultimately be a model. So sort of the think globally but act locally concept of that. But what I love about what it is that you bring into that conversation, sort of elevating some of Howard's points, is around the importance of that trust being like the mortar between the bricks of the components that must exist, right? So that if we just had these bricks without mortar, we've got a pile of possibility, right? But that mortar of trust and relationship becomes the thing that connects those essential bricks, those components together. So from that foundation, we can build whatever we want on top of it, right?
That's
so
exactly
Tiffany,
right.
Let me bring you into the conversation, Tiffany. You get to look at this through a unique, kind of economic lens, as a professional. So when you think of it, and of course I want both elements, because I don't want 50% of your brilliance, I want 100%, right? So when you're thinking about that, the professional component, looking at it through that economic lens, and then thinking about it from the personal component, what are those bricks for you around social capital?
Yeah, so I want to say Howard and Sarah Jane said it all, so that it's perfect to bring it in a little bit more personal for me, where social capital is capitalism with a conscience, right? It's about building relationships, having resources, and capitalism is built on, let's just say, taxes, right? And that's my life, right? Taxes. And so as Commissioner of Revenue, I have to administer and assess taxes. So I'm responsible for 2 offices, almost $3 million budget, and also assessing over $300 million of taxes that the city is going to, benefit from. But not only that, I am responsible for the taxpayers as well. So there goes the social aspect of it, where I look at taxpayers more than just revenue generators for the city. So this, just personally within the office, we started outreach programs to fit into the social capital. And one of them is our TIPS program, Tax Information Preparing Seniors, where we go out and we're that resource now. We're connecting people with certain tax relief programs so that, you know, they know how to get exempt from certain taxes. They're getting tax relief, deferrals, those kind of aspects. So I look at it as more personal within the office and using it as an example of good social capitalism.
Absolutely, absolutely. And every one of our perspectives, by virtue of our professional responsibilities and our positions inside of the community, definitely changes, alters, tweaks slightly the way we might look at this thing, right? All of which are legitimate, but just a hair different in the way that we might approach it, right? So I'm going to come back to you for a second, Howard. So when we start thinking about, you know, all of these components that are supposed to be connected inside of the social capital, what does that mean for you in sort of your capacity? Like, given what it is that you do, and we hear this great big term, what is it? Something out here can exist out here, but what does it mean when you bring it in here a little bit closer to yourself? So can you talk to me a little bit about that? How do those things really connect?
Yeah, thanks. So we, as an organization, as a nonprofit organization, we're mission driven, right? And so it was about 5 years ago that we actually were very intentional about building social capital into our mission. And so we say now at the Mariners Museum and Park that we connect people to the world's waters, because through the waters, through our shared maritime heritage, we're connected to one another. And I've actually heard you talking about social capital in the past, Al, and this was a word that you grabbed onto, right? It's really about connection, and trying to understand what the basis of that connection is.
Right.
And we think that this mission statement for us is really important at this moment in time, because that shared connection to the water, that maritime heritage, transcends race, ethnicity, gender, age, socioeconomics, some of the ways that we sometimes feel different from one another, right? And the truth is, there's a very rich maritime history in all of those different communities, right? So if we can play that up, if we can educate people on that, then maybe we have a shared identity, right? The first element that I try to go to academically, right, about social capital. And once we can create that shared identity, then maybe we as a museum team can also foster more frequent and high quality social exchange, where people from what look to be different communities are actually engaging with one another. And if I can just say one other thing about that, just because it's a little bit abstract, right, to say, well, you know, the way that we did it tangibly and concretely is a new mission statement. You can't be for those words, you know, about us saving the world or whatever. So then we had to get real about that.
Right.
So our first step was providing access to the museum and these stories, right? We used to charge $14 a person to come into the museum. Well, at that rate, I can say all I want, that I'm telling a story that transcends socioeconomics, for example. But if I'm charging $14 a head and it costs a family of 5, $70 to come into the museum, I just put up a barrier to entry and I said, this story actually isn't for you.
Right.
And so we dropped our price of admission to $1 per person.
Wow.
With the understanding that through the water, we're one city, one region, one nation, one world, $1, right? And just started by providing access. And that flowed over to our educational enrichment programs, where we now raise corporate sponsorships, and we're raising endowment to go out to the Title I schools, the public schools in our region, and offer free educational enrichment programs for kids. We'll even pay, you know, pre-pandemic, we were even paying for bus transportation to get the kids to the museum. And there's a lot more to say there, but that was one of the concrete ways that we said, okay, as a starting off point, we have to focus on access, because otherwise it's for naught. It's just words.
So see, that's a thing that I think is extraordinarily important when we're going to take on anything in terms of really trying to, if we say connection, matters, right? And we're really about this thing, then we have to be able to back that up with the way that we're operating every day. I think that what is absolutely true in the world that we are in now is that people are over all of the fluff. Okay, like they're really over the soundbite that, you know, sounds just right, and it's great PR for your company, your entity, your position, but I can't feel what it is that you're saying. Right? I want to be able to feel it, because connection means that I am part of this thing also, right? So if we really are serious about this thing, then access is exactly where it has to begin. How am I able to connect, right? So my question then to you, Sarah, is that if connection is essential to us being able to do this, and access is essential to us being able to do this, then speak to me, because you introduced the word diversity in this concept of social capital. Tell me why diversity matters inside of this discussion when we're talking about access.
Yeah, thank you. When I first moved over here to the United States, I was blown away by how challenging it was here when it came down to bringing people together. I had never really experienced that. And so for us at Civic, we look very much at making sure that we have a very diverse set of programs. We do 2 programs in total. We have an executive level program where we try to educate our executive leadership challenges and opportunities in the region. And then we have a program for Civic Scholars, which are for high-performing college students. And the diversity component, I'll just put it into those 2 programs, for example. When people come at things from different angles or from different backgrounds, or they have different life experiences, it actually makes everything that much richer. It makes the conversation richer. And the truth is, you have to leave your preconceived notions at the door, and you have to be open to listening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, actually, is to just stop and just listen to people who have different viewpoints, or they're coming at it from a different set of values even. And it's having the ability to allow everybody to say the space to be able to say what they want to say, be heard, but also to have the respect to understand that what they are saying is through their vantage point, and then potentially even to put yourself into their shoes. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about connectivity and we talk about diversity, and yeah, I mean, it's true. We do live in an environment in Hampton Roads where different communities are not necessarily connected. And I think that the leadership in the region is looking really hard at finding ways to be able to bridge that. And it's not going to happen overnight. And that's the thing, is this dialogue is only just beginning. And it's upsetting that that's actually the case. But we have an opportunity right now to actually talk as human beings and to really stop and listen and say, you know, tell me more about how you see that. How does that impact you? Whether it is that, you know, your child, for example, is in a school system where they are in a Title I school, for example, and they are really, you know, you're struggling as a family and you're trying to make it by. I think that also within those school systems, for example, parents together, it starts right from the get-go. If I look at my daughter who's 9 years old, and I'm sorry, I feel really passionate about the fact that we should honestly look back to our children, because they are the ones that actually work together more cohesively than any adult out there. Mm-hmm. And look at their interactions. What do? They stop and they listen and they accept. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes down to working together as a community and working with our diversity as being the greatest asset that we have here, is we should collectively stop and raise our lend a helping hand, help people out. we shouldn't just be in our silos, and we should try to learn from other people's vantage points. And I refer back, I think that the school systems is actually where it begins. And I think that when you look at our children and the way that they deal with adversity and all of the different things that they've been faced, even in this year with COVID, I think we can learn an awful lot from them. And so I would say that connectivity is all about stopping and having a conversation first and coming in with a open blanket, just put all of your other thoughts aside.
Blank slate.
And stop and listen, and then have a conversation and ask questions. Because if you don't ask questions, you can't learn about anything.
You're absolutely right where that's concerned. And what I think that, to you and Howard's point, having worked together before on various things, how, complementary what it is that you all are saying really is, speaks to the fact that if I hear you well, Sarah Jane, it's that I see you, I hear you, and your thoughts matter, right? But Howard's point being that when I make decisions as a company to say that the cost of admission is $14, then what I'm already saying is, for certain people, I don't hear you, I don't see you, and what you think doesn't matter, because I've already put up a barrier for your ability to effectively engage or to have a seat at the table. So when we talk about diversity matters, we're not just talking about cultural diversity, but that's rich and necessary. We're not just talking about gender diversity, but that is rich and necessary. We're not just talking about economic, but we're talking about every form of diversity that knows that you have a seat at the intellectual table so that we can, as a community, build something more effectively together. So Tiffany, you understand at a very real level, because what you do every single day touches every single person in the community, perhaps in ways they don't always want to, because it is taxes. But it is definitely a pretty level playing field. You are all invited to pay taxes together. You get a tax, and you get a tax, and you get a tax. Welcome to Oprah. So but looking at that from the positive, the fact that it does touch everybody and that there is an everybody factor inside of this. When you think about that everybody factor, Tiffany, what do you think is necessary in reducing the barriers to inclusion in this necessary conversation?
So, Al, I don't know what you mean. Everybody loves to pay taxes. No, they do.
Can we discuss this point further when she's done giving her answer?
But just going off of connectivity, one of my biggest things when I first started was community outreach. And I do believe Commissioner of Revenue's office is the first level of government that people touch. Most people have a vehicle, so they're going to get personal property tax, business licenses, all of that. So our biggest thing was, how do we educate? How are we a resource to the citizens of Newport News and to the business owners of Newport News? And to make paying taxes a little bit better, because I believe once you're educated on why you're paying it, where your taxes are going, how we're using it, being very transparent, people, it really alleviates a lot of that tax stress. And I hope we have done a good job that when they see my name come across in the mail, that they're not super upset. But it did lead us to start our lead tours, which is a funny coincidence, where just being out in the community, we visit business owners, we visit businesses across the city of Newport News, because I want to get, I want to have a feeling for what they're going through. Are the taxes that I'm assessing, not creating, I just want to make a difference, assessing, are they hurting you as a taxpayer or as a business owner, or are they helping you? And, that has led us to way more projects than I'm sure my office wants to do. But, looking at business personal property taxes, how is this helping you? How can we alleviate it? And how can I be that connection between the business owner and our state delegates and senators and our city council? And then one of our biggest things was actually creating the starting to be the creation of the Minority Business Commission, which is our first in the nation and the first in the state of Virginia, because we went around to different businesses and we heard minority business owners, women-owned businesses. We heard they needed more accessibility to government contracts. They needed more education, more resources. So just looking outside of the box of being commissioner, how could I take what they're saying and connecting it to reality and action so that we can help them, and it would also help Virginia in a whole.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I love that. Like, I mean, it's the reality of what it is that I'm doing. How does what I'm doing directly impact the community that I serve, right? But now as we start to shift from like just the doing of the job, but the realization of what our deeper responsibility is inside of this, that thing that has been elevated that says it's more than doing a job well, it's about doing a job in a way that makes a difference, right? That people feel like they are seen, people feel like they matter, people feel like they are connected, regardless of the differences in the things that it is that we do, right? So if we know that there are certain things, as Howard referenced, there are certain barriers that may be present inside of that, well, then on the opposite side, what kinds of things consistently in very real, tangible ways, Tiffany started to touch on those, can we be doing in order to elevate social capital inside of the spaces that we control? And I will open that up for any of you who want to speak to that first, like, what can we really be doing about this inside of our spaces? And then we can talk more broadly about what can we be doing this sort of from a collective perspective, because it always begins with the one before it begins with the 1,000, right? So starting from the one, what are your thoughts about things that we can actually do in real ways that could make a difference in expanding this thing that we're calling social capital?
So if I could just jump in real quick, one small, well, it might not be small to some, but one tangible thing that we're starting to do in the office, and jumping on to what Sarah Jane was saying about diversity, is that, sometimes reading code or understanding our literature, if English is not your first language, can be difficult. Reading code, if English is your first language, is difficult. What we are working on is translating our, our public service announcements, translating our literature, our forms into different languages. So we're working with our two, I guess, most popular in Newport News, which would be Spanish and Korean, and hoping that this would be a template for other commissioners' offices and other offices to start doing as well, so we can, just meet everybody on their playing field and really, working with our diverse community.
Fantastic. Howard, you were going to say something.
I was going to say I'm withdrawing from going first. I was going to let those two go first.
I'll hop in, Howard.
Save him.
Well
Sarah.
done, Sarah. Yeah, that's right. I'm still thinking. I'm still thinking.
No. I think that the idea of mentoring, not necessarily a formal mentorship, but maybe reaching out to somebody that, you see as maybe potentially, has a voice that, you want other people to hear. They maybe haven't had the opportunity to be leveraged that way. Maybe as leaders in the community, we certainly, our program has a mentorship program. What we find with the students is that the executives who mentor the students learn just as much from the students as they, so vice versa. But I think it is actually just that educational piece too. It's taking time to actually just stop and maybe learn about something new that you haven't had the opportunity to learn about. Because then you'll have a greater appreciation for it. So when you're at school, you're sitting down in the classroom, you learn about history, et cetera, et cetera. But if you take a small amount of knowledge and maybe take that and learn a little bit more about maybe another part of our Hampton Roads community, for example, if you live, I live in Norfolk, taking a trip to go and see Fort Monroe, for example, it's that wonderful culture that we have here where we can continually learn about the community that we live in, but also I think it's the opportunity to help to bring other people along with you, and it's making those connections, and that mentorship doesn't need to be a formal thing, but just helping somebody else in the community to be able to elevate their voice and be heard. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I would leave it. Howard, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah Jane.
You're welcome.
The traffic's backed up at the HRBT. I just
and please note that if that traffic is backed up, where nobody's going to see anybody on that side of the water, because we consider that a whole nother state.
That's exactly.
We got a bridge widening. It's fine. We're fine.
Right. That's right. We just did a 757 vision thing on that, I think. I got to say, again, I'm going to kind of go from abstraction down to concrete, and I'm going to speak sort of organizationally this time, and not so much individually. So we talk a lot at the museum about servant leadership. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about servant leadership, what we mean by that, and most of the people on this call are going to be familiar with the term, what we mean is that a leader's posture within an organization or community is in service of something bigger than themselves, right? That they're not sort of at the top casting down decrees and wisdom and knowledge and things like this, right? And then the second is that job one for the leader is the empowerment and development of his or her people, or service to the community. And so, so it's, I think for everybody on the call, it's certainly true with me personally. We think a lot about our own challenges with our organization, with our own personal lives, right? And things that we have to tackle, and that can have the effect of making us transactional with the world around us, right? Because I'm so aware of the financial difficulties and the regulatory hurdles and the this and the that and the other thing that kind of frustrate our ability to accomplish all the things we want in the world, then we look at a partnership or someone else in the community, and it's kind of like the first thought is, man, is there going to be anything for me in this? And so the whole reason we talk about servant leadership, what if we flip that? What if we look for opportunities to serve, and we try to put ourselves in the background? And it's a discipline to try to do that. And I just recommend that as the step. And so just as an illustratively, so what does that mean for an organization like ours? Well, the Mariners Museum has had its galleries closed ever since the pandemic started. We're reopening Memorial Day weekend. But during that time, we have a very large campus, and we have parking lots that are dedicated to the museum that are now not being used. And so when Goodwill found themselves inundated with donations, and because of their own protocols, unable to process those donations as quickly as they could, we allowed them to bring 18 semi-truck trailers full of donation stuff to the Mariners Museum and park them until they could get through them. We didn't charge them anything, we just did it. The Red Cross, we've hosted over a dozen Red Cross blood drives while the galleries are closed. They'll come do it in our physical space. We've helped the food bank. We've tried to make our facility available to nonprofit partners whenever we can, to help advance their own mission, you know. And through that, what ends up happening is you end up building relationships, right? And you end up building a little bit of trust. And so, but it comes from that sort of and it's discipline of trying to be service oriented first.
No, so I so love that, because it is very much our inclination, particularly as public figures and business professionals. The higher you go, the worse it tends to be, is to become transactional, because you're always looking at bottom lines, you know, and check the boxes. And what's very interesting about social capital is if you're going to do it right, it's going to be inconvenient. And very inconvenient, because it doesn't fit into a box. And it is something that, going to something that you said, Sarah, it's in that mentorship and the going to talk to people that you normally don't talk to. The other thing that is, not only is it not transactional and it's inconvenient, but it is intentional. Anything that is going to be done well is going to be done intentionally. which means that you have to be willing to rethink the way in which you lead and rethink the way in which you serve, which is what Howard is speaking to. So even though originally we are created for this and I'm paid to do that, right? And when I'm no longer able to do that, and instead of spending all of my time trying to figure out how to outsmart the system so I can do that I was originally paid for, let me start thinking about new ways that I can better connect with my community, which may mean that I have to rethink the way that I serve my community. Despite the fact that I'm a CEO, a president, a head of, I am now saying that my value system is elevated above my profit line, right? My value system is elevated above my profit margins, that my reputational currency is really in my connection. And that I will put above all things. And when we effectively do that, we open the door for real connection in ways that help to elevate that social capital, right? So, but that is so intentional. And it's the thing that we often forget to do because we're so cerebral in our approaches to things that people can hear us, but they can't feel us. And connection is always about feeling. It's never about checking the box. Howard, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, so Al, welcome to the club of cleaning up what I'm trying to say. See, I use the word discipline because I was 14 years in the Army. You said intentional, which is what I meant to say. Thank you.
It was the spirit behind the discipline.
That's it.
Howard.
No, that's what I meant.
Totally.
What you just said is what I meant. Thank you.
Totally the spirit behind it. And that intentionality, like really is necessary, and it's really important that we recognize that to do anything right, we're going to have to do the hard thing. And that hard thing is the inconvenient thing. And it's perhaps even the uncomfortable thing, because diversity of ideas means I've got to talk to people that are not in my usual circle. So I've got to have conversations that will turn into relationships that are not part of my usual circle in order to know things that I didn't know before. So Tiffany, when you're kind of thinking about how we kind of expand these tentacles, like out into our community in ways that your role does not necessarily require, but you're choosing to do, what is it that is necessary from a communication level at the leadership level in order to move things from what we're used to doing to the things that we need to do in order to help build the social capital? How are you communicating these messages to your teams? How are you communicating these messages outwardly to be able to garner the support for that? Because it's not, as a leader, you're not doing this on your own, you're taking people with you. So how are you developing that message and communicating that message? And you're muted, Tiffany. Oh, there we go.
So I think, and I'm loving this conversation. I was happy when Bob brought it up and included a bunch of us in there, but communication is key, and making sure that we are all on the same page of what we want to see, where we want to see Newport News per se go, where we want to see the peninsula go, where we want to see Hampton Roads go. So I am a very planning person. So I start with the purpose, like what is our purpose with a social capital platform or a campaign? And then from there, who are the key players, which would be all of us, community leaders, all the elected officials, all the businesses that we're going to try to get them on the same page of being, more social capital conscious, right? And then from there, breaking it down even further, each of us will then take our own, from our own aspects, and me from the Commissioner of Revenue's office, Howard from the Mariners Museum, how are we all fitting into this social capital plan and making sure that we are all accountable? And I know for me, just even being a resource, one, and knowing that I have other resources where people can come to me and ask me questions, and I can say, you know what, Sarah Jane does this, Howard does this. So even me just having that quality of a network and remembering that I have a quality of a network, because I'll be the first one to say, well, I don't know someone who did that. So just knowing that and then being able to reach them and saying, oh, well, can you talk to such and such? And knowing that they're going to be accountable and follow through, I think is the biggest thing. So really just starting with us being on the same page at the top level and working it all the way down the process.
That is fantastic, Tiffany, because really at the end of the day, I call them big V's and little V's, like that there is a great big vision that you can have from a national level. There's a great big vision that you can have from the C-suite, but everybody needs to know how they fit into that vision, right? It needs to be effectively communicated that this is what I believe we could do together, right? But then it has to move from what it is that we can do together to little V, this is what we need to do inside of my department, inside of my organization, to smaller V, this is what we need to do as a team, to tiny V, this is what I need to do as an individual to make that true. So that if I go the opposite direction, I go from step 1 to 2 to 3, and we go from tiny to big, and there's a fluidity that exists between those two spaces. From whichever direction you're looking from, you know what the value and the goal was because it was effectively communicated. So I understand it at the top level and I understand it at the bottom level. But if I can't find the I inside of it, then I struggle to be able to see the value of this thing because I don't know where I fit inside of it, which means that it could be a beautiful idea, but it remains out there an idea, and it does not become something in here, which becomes a value. Right? So we want to make sure that we're moving our ideas to values by making sure that we're effectively communicating those things, which is what I hear you saying, Tiffany, that is the communication at a leadership level is really essential. And then to understand that even if the vision starts at the bottom, if you could communicate your vision strong enough from the bottom, you can change bottom up as effectively as people can change from top down. So it doesn't matter where you sit on that ladder. It's not what's going to fall on you. It may be what you toss up that can change an organization and a community, right? So, but it's all in communication, which is the fundamental piece of connection. We cannot connect with those that we're not communicating with, right? Howard, you look like you have a thought.
Yeah, and I was going to try to throw it back over to Sarah Jane, because I think in addition to, I love that description. I saw Veronica said that, and so I'm quoting Veronica, and I'm affirming that as well. That it also has to be authentic, right? We can't just sort of use words and articulate things that that I heard on the panel just said, about social capital. So we're going to adopt that too, and then I'm going to kind of keep doing business over here. And the reason, because Sarah Jane builds her entire program around this idea of building relationships, and she's incredible. I think she's building a class right now. She's incredibly intentional about that. And so I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions or redirect like that, but I wanted to hear Sarah Jane talk about.
You can go ahead. That's what a conversation is. It's organic and it's real and it makes room. So yes.
Thanks, Howard. Actually, Howard helped us. He was a fantastic moderator for us before he took on his new role at the Mariners Museum. And he's right. I mean, so we have a tagline, which is regional relationships, regional results. And so what we try to do is provide these educational programs, because again, I'll go right back to that education component. It is so important to be educated on our region and understand all the intricacies of our region so that we can begin to grow our social capital. But, I think it's one thing that we do is we ask people to step up, but also at the same time, I liked your V's with your, but put it to value. So we ask our executives to, and also our civic scholars, to think about their values. And they find their values, their passions. You can match their skill sets to all of the different things that are happening in the community, and you can allow them to have a voice at the same time, and they can be part of something. But the biggest thing I think also is when it comes down to collaboration, I think our region actually is collaborating more than it ever has before. And it's really exciting. Bob and I actually just this morning spent our entire morning together collaborating because we're doing it for the bigger picture. We are setting aside our own agendas for the better of Hampton Roads. And that right there is talking about intentionality. That is a really key component to all of this, is setting aside your own agenda and looking at what is best for our community as a whole. And if we do that, we're going to be successful. So Howard, thank you for that, because you were a key part of that movement during that time frame for us, and really helped to kind of direct our vision for how civic plays a role in the community and how we can kind of build and foster those amazing skills and passions that we have in our executives and our scholars.
I love it. I love it. You know, it's communication intentionality that moves visions into values, you know, that it really does not exist out there anymore. And it really becomes something that is in here. Bob, I noticed that there were a couple of questions that are popping up in the Q&A box.
Yes. Okay. So great conversation, guys. It was really fantastic. We got some good questions from the audience. The first one is from Nick Honesty. Great last name, Nick.
For sure.
How do we, basically, he cuts to the heart of the matter with all of this, right? We can have all these conversations, but where's the action? So in a community where there has been a breakdown in trust, and he's not saying that that's our community, but in a community where there has been a breakdown in trust, how do you restore that trust? And I think this conversation addressed all that, but can we have some specifics? Sarah Jane.
I'll hop right on in there. I think it goes down to that communication. I think when you think about the breakdown in trust, it's because people stop communicating with each other. They stop listening and they stop playing an active role. And it's so important, that communication piece for us as part of our programming, giving people the opportunity to share their thoughts ultimately might spur something in somebody else's mind that they just hadn't seen it that way. And so it's allowing everybody the space to be able to talk. That communication piece, I think, is huge. I'll hand it over to Tiffany or Howard.
Howard definitely had something you wanted to say.
Go ahead. I communication is it, and the way that we kind of talk about that at the museum, and this is just one example of it. Is so we talked about access, right, as the start to building social capital, but if it's just access and then you walk through the galleries on your own and look at all the panels and read the words and look at the stuff, you know, that's not really building social capital. So we created an expectation that our staff gets in the galleries. And so we engage. And I got to tell you, like, this question about like the community and trust in the community and breakdown and all these kinds of things, they're too big. It's too overwhelming, you know, and it's just got to start like person to person. There's just no way around it, you know. You made the point earlier, Al, about the inconvenience of it, you know, and the extra time that it takes. But we've got a saying too that you've got to go slow to go fast, you know, and it's just one person at a time. And so we stop and we'll ask people in the galleries, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? What do you enjoy most at the museum today? Can I show you this thing over here? You know, and it might only be a 5-minute interaction. Maybe the people don't want to talk to us, you know, or say, enjoy yourselves, and they head on. But you got to do that. It's got to be the relationship, and it's got to be engagement. And I'm extending Sarah Jane's remark about communication.
So Bob, let me respond to that. So one of the interesting things that I get to do when I'm not doing these kinds of things is that I get to work with couples, and as weird as this sounds, my expertise with couples is infidelity. Okay, so that is the ultimate trust fracture, right? Is between two people who were supposed to be committed to each other and something went wrong, right? But the fix action, if something can be fixed inside of that space, is actually very similar to what happens in communities and what happens in corporations and what happens in organizations, right? There are kind of 4 components inside of that. One is ownership. Because if you won't own your mess up, there's no place else for us to begin, right? So first we've got to own where the trust was fractured. The second thing is communication. We got to talk about the things that were underneath that fracture, because it didn't just end up broken. There were things that led us to the brokenness, and we've got to be willing to have a conversation about that trajectory that got us there. The third thing is that we need to have a correction. What is our plan to do this thing differently? What is going to be our corrective action around this trust fracture that has taken place? And the fourth thing, that is the thing that's the hardest, is consistency. Whatever it is that we owned, whatever it is that we talked about, whatever it is that we said we are going to correct, we have to consistently do what we said we were going to do. Because if you don't, do understand that that fracture, it's a weaker bone now. So it does not take much for you to re-injure that very same bone. So you've got to make sure that you're doing the things consistently to allow for it to fully heal, so that it can handle the pressures that it will then be exposed to yet again, because we're all human. So even when you're doing that inside of a community, you've got to make sure that you are owning it, you're talking about it, you have a plan to be able to fix it, and you consistently prove to people that I mean this thing because I am doing it the right thing over and over and over again, regardless of how inconvenient that is. Back to you, Bob.
That was awesome.
Hey, can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
So I loved hearing what Howard had to say because I know him to be like that. That's why he's on this panel. That's why he's a good friend. So my mother-in-law, who's 87 years old, lives with my wife and me. And she and her caregiver, who comes during the day, went and visited the Mariners Museum about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And she came back from her day at the Mariners Museum, and she said, I had a little fall and on the curb trying to get in the car, but there was this handsome bald man who we met in the museum while we were in the museum, and he helped me up and helped me get back in the car. And I called Howard and I said, did you help a lady get into her car today and that you talked to in the museum? He said, yes, I did. And I said, that was my mother-in-law. So very small world, but that's Howard in action. And I think that's leadership in action too, right? Be present and be an interested listener. And you can, first of all, make a lot of new friends and you can make an impact in the community. So Howard does a great job. Sarah Jane does a great job. Tiffany does a great job. And Al does a great job too. So that's why I do the panel and the moderator.
Thank you for that.
So next question from an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
Ask yourself, whoever you are, what should the business community in Hampton Roads be prioritizing right now to promote social capital or stakeholder capitalism? And I think this kind of came out during the conversation too, but over to you. Let's go to Howard. Because you already spoke about this a little bit, Howard. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this, for me, this goes in part to, my initial reaction, right, is that this goes in part to what Al was saying earlier about the sort of inconvenience of serving. Mm-hmm. Think about like I think one or two members of our team, of the museum team, are watching right now. And I hate email correspondence, and they know it, and we talk about it a lot and everything else. But why is that? Because when I send the email, I don't have context. And so I don't know what condition the other person who's receiving the email is in when they receive the email. Mm-hmm. And then they don't have context. They can't interpret the emotion behind the words, right? It's what you were saying earlier too, Al, about kind of above the neck and below the neck stuff, right?
Yep.
And so from a business community perspective, some of what we're talking, I believe in everything we're talking about because I think it's the right thing to do, right? There's a sort of a moral and value judgment that I'm making myself in participating in the panel. Let's strip all that away. Just say we're acting out of self-interest, right? If you do business without promoting social capital, you are sending an email into the blind. Because you lack, it's the whole conversation about diversity, right? Again, set aside for a moment that it's the right thing to do. It's the functional equivalent of sending an email when you don't know who the sender is, and your actions are going to be misinterpreted. Even if you didn't intend, it gives you the opportunity, social capital gives you the opportunity to mitigate your downside risk for things that you never intended to do, but you did anyway because you were ignoring the perspective or experience of somebody else. And it prevents you from realizing upside potential, because it might be that just by tweaking your approach by that much for having listened to somebody else, you open up an entire new market where they get to play. You open up an entire new source of labor. You open up an entire new marketing channel, whatever, by focusing on social capital and diversity. Now, I'll go back to the authenticity statement too, though, right? Because if it's pretty clear you're doing it just for yourselves, you ain't getting that back.
Yeah.
But if you're sort of inclined to do this, but you're a little nervous about the idea of serving first and about building social capital and focusing on it, so then I'm sorry. So that's why you value it. The question was, what do I do? Sorry, abstraction down to.
But all good stuff, though.
Yeah, I think you end up. I think you engage. If you've got a business idea, you start talking to others about it, and bringing other folks in, talking to the customer that you're trying to serve, and things like this. I thought Tiffany's point earlier about going around talking to people about the impact of taxes. She got all of this additional information that's extra context for her in her job. And it was just by talking to the community that she serves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's engaging, right? It's going back to the blocking and tackling and talking to individual people. I'm done. Sorry about that.
No, sorry, needed.
So Howard, what I was gonna, so that was great, but that was additional to what you said before, I think, and that's important. But you talked earlier also about looking for opportunities to serve, and I think that comes from the top of a business, right? Not necessarily. It comes from some people's heart, obviously, and there's people who want to be engaged in the community. But I think a business leader telling his employees to look for opportunities to serve and present those opportunities to serve outside of the normal 9 to 5, outside of the brick and mortar of the building that they work in. Because to truly be a contributor to the community and a good citizen requires more than 9 to 5, go home, right? So, so I think that's what you were getting at before, but that was a good addition. Tiffany, do you have any comments on that one?
Yes. So as you know, I'm in a government office. I treat this office as a business, and I'm always talking to my supervisors. Your department is a business, and how does your business fit into like the entire corporation, right? So first thing is transparency. I'm transparent with my employees, and I believe in being transparent with the taxpayers. Second is listening. We, I work on my listening skills, but listening is very important because, again, going back to asking questions, we're not going to know what the other person is thinking unless we ask questions and we listen to their response. And then from there, we can collaborate, because collaboration is then going to turn taxpayers into stakeholders, and they're going to feel like they have a part in the mission and in the overall goal. And then follow through. We have to, from all of the things that we've heard, from the action items that are needed, we have to follow through with them. And I believe that's what builds trust. I believe that's how we can, as business owners, can be involved with the social capital movement.
And when you can see that your dollar is doing good things and it's doing what the city said it was going to do, you feel different about having to spend that dollar, because as opposed to it feeling like a dollar lost, it feels more like a dollar invested. And that's a very different feeling for a community. And going back to Bob, your statement before, and kind of touching on what Howard was saying in terms of the value of social capital, I call it the wet grass principle, right? Because things are always going to go wrong inside of a space, be it a business, a relationship, it doesn't matter what it is. But there's a reason why certain environments, that when something goes wrong and it's like a match, when you drop it into dry grass, it's going to set a flame. But if you drop it into wet grass, it fizzles out, right? So when you have strong social capital in a space, it's like having a wet grass environment, that when something goes wrong, our ability to be able to recover from it is inherent, because the conditions for the fire are not there, because we have so invested in watering our relationships that we are a wet grass organization, we are a wet grass community, we are a wet grass nation. We're human. Things are going, fires will be started, but they don't have to spread if you have strong social capital.
That's amazing.
That was, man.
That was amazing.
You dropped the mic like 17 times on this. You're only supposed to do it once at the end, just for future.
May I add one thing to the conversation? Because I think that we've, the one thing that I was thinking about with promoting social capital, what's the one challenge we've all had for over a year now? And that is living in a virtual environment.
Absolutely.
So as business community members, business leaders, your entire teams probably have been virtual for this entire time. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about that, really should be our key focus, actually. We should start small, which is just getting back to the basics. When we don't have to meet each other with squares around our heads, and we're actually seeing each other face to face. Those interactions that we've had a lot of fun on this call, but imagine how animated we would have been in person. Right? Gosh, everyone's leaving the call very quickly now. But I think as community leaders, though, and just members of our community, you think about how many people have been isolated. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Isolation, when your muscle memory and your mind, this is what we've lived in. This is what we've known. Our children have known this. Our grandparents have known this. Our parents have known this. We've known this. And so we've lost perhaps that skill set of having that interaction on a personal level. Mm-hmm. So I might add that our responsibility is to get back to thinking about how we interact with one another when we're back in person, but also forget the emails. Maybe it's a case that for one day a week, you vow that you're not going to send an email. You're going to pick the phone up and you're going to have a conversation, because going back to what Howard said, which is you don't know how the other person is going to receive it. You don't know what's happened in their day before they open that email. As leaders, cultivating that again and getting back into that normality, I think is going to be key for our entire region. And I can't wait to get outside of this.
These bosses. Absolutely. Bob, do we have any other questions?
We do, but we've kind of run out of time. So, and I actually think, so Jeff Kincaid had a question and Tara Ramsey had a question. Jeff and Tara, my number is 757-818-3021. I'd love to chat about your questions, but that last segment right there, Sarah Jane, I think you kind of answered what Tara was saying, but Tara was talking about we're going to have to get used to virtual because it's going to be with us for a while. I would say we don't have to get used to it. Get your vaccine for one thing. Public health service announcement. Get your vaccine for one thing. But secondly, I think you're right. Virtual is going to be around for a while, but it's going to be a tool instead of a way of life. So we have to get back in person, and it's going to take courage and prudence. I'll tell you what, looking at smiling faces is the first step to developing and reviving social capital. So, and having personal conversations. And as Al pointed out to me the second time we met, the first time we met in person, she said, "You're an in-person kind of person." And I said, "Oh, absolutely. I don't like being on the screen. I especially don't like sharing a screen with you four because I pale in comparison." But
you'd rather be hanging out with us.
Well, I was going to give this microphone to Al so she can.
So I can drop it.
Yes, but let me just wrap it up real quick. So great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Sarah Jane, you're absolutely right. It would be much better in person. Hey, take that camera off me. My hair is horrible. Thanks very much to the distinguished panelist and to Alvin. She told me I can call her Al. And I noticed that Howard already picked up on that.
Yep, because Howard and I are best friends. So
I introduced you.
Yes, you get all the credit for that.
So I'm sure that everybody who was tuned into this call, and for the whole time, very few people dropped before an hour. I'm sure you're all fired up and ready to take some action to ensure the successful future of the 757 and the Peninsula, Newport News, everything. And the Peninsula Chamber, in partnership with many other partners, including HR CAP, who I was on with this morning, we're here to help and to help move forward bravely and prudently and with enthusiasm. So stay tuned for more on what's coming, because this is the very beginning of the conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You all probably heard my phone number when I gave it to two people in public, but you're welcome to call me or shoot me an email on one of those days that you actually can send emails, because this is really a grassroots community effort, and we really need to hear your input so we can move forward and revive and restore social capitalism in the 757. Once again, thanks to Cox for being our series sponsor, and thanks to all of you who joined us today, and especially those of you who stayed until the bitter end. Drop the mic.